Hello, everyone, and welcome to IGN Overclocked episode 18 for January 13th, 2016. I'm Dan Stapleton. This over here is Vincent Janito.
Hello.
And we're joined by two very special guests today from the XCOM 2 team at Firaxis. We got Garth DeAngelis, the lead producer.
Hello. Nice to be here.
All right, and Mark Nauta.
Hello. It's good to be here as well.
You're a designer.
I am a designer and programmer, but
yeah, I guess everyone at Firaxis has to program a little. All designers also have to program.
Yeah, it's generally the way it works. Sid, Jake, down the line.
Surprisingly novel approach these days, actually, in development.
Yeah, it's. I know why, because it's a lot of work. But, it's a lot of fun too. So,
so XCOM 2 is out on February 5th, which is real soon.
Yeah.
Those of you watching instead of listening can see beads of sweat.
No, we are ecstatic. We're very, very excited. It's 3 weeks away, but the team's working hard, and we sort of have this preview build out there now that's getting some pretty cool responses, and a lot of the game is playable, and people are giving us feedback on. And
yeah, we just played a few missions that
yeah.
you can watch on the site. Please do. It's a lot of fun. Jose got killed.
Give him my is that who I killed?
That was
give him my apologies.
You don't even know his name.
Yes,
killed the man.
I know.
Garth was driving recklessly.
That's how I go.
Yeah, it was kind of hilarious. He drove him right into the middle of how many enemies was that? Like 12?
Yeah, I mean, look, there was no enemies there when I made
It
the
was
move.
a good amount.
Yeah.
All I saw were two civilians that needed rescuing, and then all of a sudden the enemies came out of the woodwork.
He was ambitious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ambitious driver.
That's right.
But one of the things that I am most excited about for XCOM 2, having put probably around 500 hours into XCOM Enemy Unknown and Within,
Sounds about right.
is the randomization of it's their random number generator driven games in that every shot has a chance to hit or miss, but the sequence of things that happen in your campaign is dramatically different this time as opposed to the first time when there's basically missions happen somewhat randomly, and which map you get is random, but all the main events are kind of in a set order. This one is much more dynamic in I count about 10 ways that things change up.
Sure.
So the first one, the most obvious, let's get that one out of the way, is the procedurally generated tactical maps, where you can do the same even like story mission twice, and everything is shuffled around and different. So there's no more like, oh, this map again, or I know exactly where I need to go to spot where the aliens usually spawn.
Right. Yeah, that was a very early goal, was procedural maps. So that's one of the first things I worked on when I started on the project, but it was going on even before I became a part of it, with the art team and the level design team, figuring out how we wanted the handcrafted feel from EU, but we also wanted it to be different every time. So we came up with a system of, we'll have handcrafted pieces that we, put together in cool ways, and we'll, the spawn points will be different, and where objectives can spawn will be different, and, where you spawn on the map and your path through the map will be different. And like tons of other stuff that's kind of very technical. Like the biome can change, and it'll be raining time of day is all based on the world time of day. So there's tons of layers and layers upon stuff that is constantly changing with these maps to kind of encourage what you were saying, never seeing the same thing.
And in practice, I've been playing around with this preview build a lot. In practice, it's just kind of taken all thoughts of trying to memorize the map out of my head, even though I don't actively do that. Like I don't even bother like remembering. It's like, oh, well, this is around the corner from that, because I know it's futile. Right. So it's much more just, hey, look at the map, read it for what it is, instead of trying to apply an existing pattern to it.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It feels more dynamic that way.
The team did an amazing job with that too, because sort of what you just said is that you don't even notice how much work went into that. It just feels like this sustained thing as you go through the game. You can't predict layout, and all the nuts and bolts that Mark was alluding to. The goal that we wanted to get was that it's just this long-term thing that changes the feel of overall the game, and they did such a fantastic job of that. But it's not super noticeable up front at the same time.
And at the same time, on top of that, it looks better than the old game,
Yeah.
and it breaks better than the old game when you blow stuff up.
It's pretty cool because this is sort of a rolling goal from the designers too. Like I think we talked about this with you. We wanted to do this on Enemy Unknown. We wanted procedural maps, but the team sort of had to go through some learning lessons. I think when we prototyped it on Enemy Unknown, everything was procedural down to where the trash can went, literally on the map. So there were like these mixtures of like outhouses next to a hay bale, and then a silo in between them, and things like that. And so the team took a lot of knowledge that they earned from Enemy Unknown, and here's how to handcraft, here's how to make it look beautiful, and here's the design rules for tiles and space between them, and let's parlay that to XCOM 2 and still have elements of what we learned from EU, but then get the procedural feel. So it really is cool to just observe that they took that and made it into something special.
And it's not easy either because it's like a sliding scale, right? Like on the one end, if you go totally procedural, you're going to have visual inconsistency, and it's not going to feel like this You're not going to have this unification of place where it feels like an actual world, right? But then on the other end of the spectrum, you're also giving away a lot of kind of dynamism and replayability, and finding a way to maintain the replayability and the dynamism and the ability to surprise the player while still making environments that look coherent, and also that invite players to kind of learn a consistent set of sound tactics and rules over time is a difficult balance to strike. So
that's absolutely right. I mean, the team did a great job of they got the procedural mechanics, so you have that feel for players that don't want to be able to predict, but at the same time, you have like this masterful. You still have environmental storytelling happening. And combining those, they're kind of at odds, but they found a way to make them combine, which is really, really special.
So the next thing that shakes things up is that your starting location on the world map is randomized. You can start in any one of, I don't even know how many territories there are on the map, but any continent 16. You can start on.
Yeah.
So you don't know where you're going to be in the beginning, whereas in Enemy Unknown, you pick the location of XCOM's base, and that would give you a starting bonus that you knew about. So that's a shot in the dark. You don't know where you're going to be relative to anything else. The next thing that ties into that is that the continent bonuses themselves are randomized.
Right, and we were talking about this before, but there's more continent bonuses available than there are continents in the game. So in any playthrough, you could get ones you didn't see on a previous playthrough, and they'll be at a different spot. So you end up, moving and making contact around the world, and you'll find these, ones that synergize well together, and a different playthrough will feel completely different. So it's definitely making the strategy map feel different was definitely a big focus for us. So I'm glad that.
And it even changes like the links between territories.
Yep.
You can't always go the same route that you did the previous time, even if you were to start in the same location.
Right.
Yeah, sort of building out your regions and the path that you can take. Exactly what you just said. It's cool. You'll get surprised. You're like, oh, okay, I'm in the eastern U.S. again, but the way to get to that particular alien facility may be different. You have to build out the resistance network in a different way. So it's really, really cool how different it feels.
And it's almost a little bit redundant to randomize both your starting location and everything around you, because
you just want to shuffle
we
it all.
Double down.
Shuffle it all.
Random.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I like all the randomness. It's just like, well, you've changed where everything is, and you've changed where I am. It's like
I think personally the really exciting change that you guys are talking about there specifically is that there are more of these continental bonuses than there are continents, which means that you can seed in a campaign where certain bonuses that maybe you've banked on aren't actually going to be available, and that's cool because I'm playing a lot of Nuclear Throne right now, and if you guys have played that at all, but every time I do a run in Nuclear Throne, a lot of the long-term decisions I'm going to make about what mutations I take and what weapons I pick up have to do with that first weapon drop or that first mutation I get, and it's like, well, if I get weapon X early, well, that kind of incentivizes me to think about this way, and you by making it so that sometimes players won't have access to things that they've already built good strategies around. They're like, well, my last campaign was a rousing success because I had this bonus.
Right.
Well, if I don't start with that bonus and there's no continents I can go to with that bonus, then I suddenly have to find a completely different way to solve this puzzle, and that's really cool.
Right, and I think EU kind of had that same thing you were talking about, where you could figure out, because they stayed in the same, they were localized. Like South America was xenobiology, so at some point South America was fairly easy to get coverage on. You could just blast all your autopsies and interrogations, but you can't do that. You will have to develop kind of on the fly a strategy. This one will give me, we saw the instant grenades and ammo. I can really build a bunch and go into these. Maybe I'll go on this harder mission once I get this bonus. So kind of changes. Yeah, it changes how you have to deal with it as you play.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any favorite continent control bonus?
I like the modular weapon attachment.
You get more.
Gives you an
weapon
extra
upgrades.
slot.
Yeah.
I like. Go ahead. Sorry.
So just to
that's
clarify.
basically it.
To
To clarify
I
what
like
it is, you can now bump up the amount of upgrades you can put on each weapon type. So if conventional is 1 slot, you can bump that up to 2.
Yep.
And then for the tier 2 and 3 weapons, you can then bump those up to 3. So they get pretty hefty with the sorts of things they can do. If you put an auto load on there and a scope and then a stock, those weapons become legendary in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you name the weapon and give
Oh,
it a
yeah.
funky paint job. And
Yep.
and then hope you can pick it up if that soldier carrying it gets killed.
Well, that won't happen, right, Garth?
That's right.
I like the instant armors. So like you get the exosuits and the spider suits and the higher level ones instantly. So I just like how much they change the gameplay. You'd be grappling around and shooting heavy weapons. The heavy weapons one is really tempting too, because heavy weapons, it works kind of like the experimental ammo grenades. Well, you'll build heavy weapons and you won't know exactly what you get.
Right.
So it's kind of, but if they're instant, you can make that roll plenty times really quickly. So I like that.
So you've also got randomized mission rewards and randomized scanning rewards. Like there'll be the scanning events that pop up that you go and investigate them, and you might get a boatload of supplies earlier. You might get extra power for your Avenger, so you don't even have to build extra power plants. You might get extra communications capacity, so you don't have to build another communications facility. And that advantage completely changes how you build your stuff out.
Yeah, definitely.
That is, I mean, Mark's already touched on this, of sort of adjusting on the fly, but that's one of my favorite things about the game as well, and tied directly to those rumors and the rewards you get. I've often jumped over to Jake's room or Mark, and I'll be like, I needed this thing, and then the game presented me with this as an option, and it's sort of these strategy resource puzzles that come across where you're like, how do I get this? I need to find the black market first, or I need to wait for a guerrilla op that gives me this thing, or holy moly, the game just gave me this rumor site that has this X amount of supplies that I need. I can now go there. And you don't know if it's going to come or not. So, and time is still arguably, your most precious resource. But so you have to decide when you want to go for that specific resource. Do you wait for the game to give it to you from a mission, or can you sort of find it on the geoscape yourself?
And you have enough resources that getting one of those opens up a path that you might not have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And being starved of a resource forces you to play differently too.
Yes, that's right. I mean, changing on the fly is one of the coolest things about this game. And Design said on the outset, we Enemy Unknown strategy design I think was great, and it certainly was this really cool experience that had tight synergy with tactical, but they wanted to make something way more open-ended. And all of these things that you're talking about, it's pretty cool how they pulled it off.
Then you've got loot drops, which
which
we discussed earlier with the weapon slots. You can put on a stock that does guaranteed damage even if you miss. Ooh. You can put on a scope that gives you enhanced aim, or enhances your laser sight that gives you more critical damage.
Yep.
You can get free reloads. You can get all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And those dramatically change how you play as well. And it's completely random what you get.
Yes. The repeaters, which are, on the surface, you don't get much value out of them, but when they happen, they are arguably one of the most rewarding things. That's where you can just instantly execute an enemy at a very low percent chance. And there's different tiers for those loots.
That chance isn't that low at the higher tiers of that upgrade. So if you get a really good one, 15% chance to instantly kill, this huge enemy. Yeah.
And I think as a kind of a side bonus of the loot system is that it gave you guys an opportunity, if I'm understanding correctly, to create kind of a different downside to using grenades as opposed to not getting the corpse. Right. Now you're just not going to get a loot drop, and so you're still getting something. You're just not getting as much as you could get, which means that for me, in the brief time I played, grenades felt less like they were wrong. Right. It just felt like it wasn't going to be as rewarding.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the loot drops they obviously serve that purpose, and they serve kind of the meld style, get you to move.
Right.
In a different way, because you don't know they're out there, you don't know who's going to drop it, but moving to get that loot is a lot of times not the correct tactical decision at the moment. So, but that's got a timer because they got these auto detonators on their gear. So,
Got to make those tough
You gotta get
decisions.
there.
That's what makes the moment to moment XCOM pretty special. And then of course the more connections between tactical and strategy. So you have something that tangible that you can bring back. You can see it. You can put it on something, and then there's a gameplay benefit to it. Like you were saying, naming the weapons. It's just this pretty cool system that adds some connection between the two.
And on top of that, we've got randomized ammo and grenade types that you can develop in your base, which you still have to collect loot. You have to get this thing called an Illyrium core, and each one of those earns you it's like a lotto ticket, or like a
Goodie.
like a
Pull the
chance
lever.
A chance to pull the lever on the slot machine and see what comes out. Because I can say I want ammo or a different type of ammo, and I don't get to choose which one I get, but I get something. And how many different ammo types do you have?
Lots.
That's a good amount.
Lots.
We're just gonna say lots.
Yeah,
So
I think I've seen 3 or 4 so far.
There's more than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I like that. It's exciting because you don't know what you're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, and
You might get just for people who haven't seen it. You might get ammo that can set people on fire. You might get ammo that can poison people. You might get acid ammo that corrodes armor. I saw tracer ammo, which gives you extra. Is that does it boost your aim all the time, or is it after a shot?
I believe it is on
All
each
the time.
shot. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
That's super powerful for a sniper.
Yep.
Like all kinds of things like that and these are equippable. That takes up an equipment slot.
Right.
And
And they're one per, so you can keep pulling that lever. You might get multiples to equip them across units as well.
And same thing with grenades. Like we saw an incendiary grenade today, which was I'd never seen that before, and that's pretty crazy powerful.
Making fires are always fun.
Yep.
Yeah, but like we talked about before, there's some stuff that could be immune to fire. They're immune to poison. So how you use this stuff and what missions you take it on or who you give it to could change.
Right. There's all these subsystems on tactical. There are things you can do against robotic enemies to make them more items you can get from the proving grounds to make taking down robotic enemies easier. So there's all this interplay between the systems, and the proving grounds are sort of, again, that's that weapon roulette to get them.
And on top of that, we've got randomized soldier bonus skills from the Advanced Warfare Center, right? Or is it?
Yeah.
So that's it feels like training roulette from
Right. It's kind of training roulette light.
Yeah.
Which was that was arguably one of the most popular second wave.
I always
options.
play with that in second wave.
We're putting that in the core game now.
Yeah, but it's not as extensive. It's just it's one skill per soldier, right? Or do they get multiples?
You can get multiples, I believe, right?
I think it might be just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
and it's chosen for you, so you don't get a choice between two. But it's just like, oh, what is this soldier's hidden potential?
Right.
And when you build this building in your base, when you level up, you randomly might get just a additional skill that could completely change the way you play.
Right. Yeah. I actually implemented this, but there's this big not to toot my, but there's a big list of these kind of inter-class abilities that aren't sword specific or anything that would be like that, and it just chooses from all of them, and we'll put it at it will unlock at a rank, and so you could get some crazy colonel level abilities early with another. You can get Rupture from the Grenadier, which is this massive single target damage and makes him weaker to other attacks. At some lower level specialist or something, and that guy will just be a monster.
Right.
So it's pretty exciting when you see that hidden ability unlocked. You're like, oh, what is it?
And that makes each soldier feel unique, which I really like, because I kind of felt like we lost something when going from the original UFO defense to Enemy Unknown, where all the soldiers were stock. Like they all had the same exact stats to begin with, and there was a second wave modifier to fix that, hidden potential, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
But this makes each one feel a little bit more unique.
Right, and that's a big part of the XCOM experience. I feel like is your unique connection to each soldier, and obviously all the customization stuff we did, which has been talked about, but it's crazy. There's so much, kind of all feeds into that feeling of your soldiers being these unique guys.
If I can ask a question about that real quick.
Yeah.
So I guess it's always something you have to think about anytime you have this many random factors. But that one in particular makes me go like, how do you balance for that kind of thing? Like if you do end up with a low level character who gets like you said, a colonel level ability early and he's just becomes a monster. Like how do you account for that balance wise?
Well, yes, Mark. How do you account for that balance-wise?
Honestly, the answer can be you don't. It could be like, well, the player lucked out with this thing, and they get to feel powerful for a while. I mean, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think XCOM's difficulty curve, we've talked about this a little bit before, is, it's not a straight incline up. It has these, peaks and valleys. Yeah. And, and that guy could just, the balance is that guy could just get killed.
Right. Right.
Or, we don't, there's nothing really.
You're just waiting for us to get cocky.
Yeah. There's nothing really explicitly we do to kind of like counter the AWC because it is an opt-in facility, and, some of the abilities, like, your guy won't have synergy. Like, wow, I got this ability that doesn't really work with this guy. I got Death from Above for my sword ranger. It doesn't work.
Of course, you guys do like a first pass for things that make completely zero sense for interclass abilities, right? But even after that, to opt into the AWC, that takes time, that takes resources. So you're giving up something else as well. And they did such a fantastic job of balancing sort of faucets and sinks, and you're not just sort of getting this ability to make these super soldiers now. You're giving up something else.
And I think even the really powerful abilities, especially the kind of cross-class ones, they'll make that guy powerful, but he's not going to be, a guy that can single-handedly carry the.
Oh yeah, that's not how XCOM works. You
right.
know. And in any case, and even if he did make some victories possible that wouldn't maybe normally have been for that particular player, that's kind of okay, right? That just means like, hey, this particular campaign was the one where I got through the middle section almost exclusively because I lucked out on this one one roll. That's okay.
And that's a great player story.
Exactly, that's a great story. So
and the fact that you can't replicate it is great.
Right.
Because if you could replicate it, then it would be unbalanced. But if you can't replicate it, then it's just awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point, actually.
It makes it extremely easy to balance when.
But and that is a really good point, going back to the AWC and what you can do, the character customization that Mark touched on with the visuals and the way that the team tripled down on that and everything you can do to make your IGN office mates. But then the mechanics behind it too are so much deeper than Enemy Unknown. So you do get that sort of different mechanical DNA feel, that they're not just a name and a cool hat that make them one of your office mates. It's also, Naomi or Jose or whoever, they also had this unique cross-class ability from the AWC that no one else had. That'll make you remember them.
Yeah, and you can give them a personal combat sim, so
there's
an extra layer of stuff.
That's
Those
more
are
loot,
random drops,
So we've also got, speaking of super soldiers, you got the Psi soldiers, and their development is completely different from all the other classes.
Yep, in EU it was kind of a class on top of another class. You get Psi abilities, and they'd have to have the gift. So we kind of turned around on that, and now you can train up rookies in the Psi lab, which has its own path to get with research and building facility. But then when you learn new abilities, you kind of pick from a random pool of all their abilities and then train for amount of time. So you could get, just like before, you could get a late game ability early. It will take a long time to train, but you could have this lower level Psi Operative, which is a unique class, have this really powerful ability, and that might be like one ability that you use. So it makes the Psi Operative really feel different than the other classes, because in the strategy layer, they are completely different, and they don't level up the same way, and you have to train them, and they're not really part of your other squad for a lot of the time, but then they come in and they really help out.
Yeah, they're sort of studying it back at base. They're not making kills on the battlefield leveling up.
But you're also not picking which skills they get, right?
No, it picks randomly. It gives you a choice of 3, but
those 3 are random.
Are random.
Mm-hmm. So and that's, you can't say I really like this ability, I'm going to get a Psi guy with that ability, and you roll the dice. Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can't build your entire strategy around it.
Yeah, and I think like we're hinting at, we want to get away from there's a clear optimal strategy, It just because it's random and it won't let you do that, so you have to react to everything that's happening.
What's optimal will change depending on what options are randomly presented to the player, and that's actually really cool, because that means that, so before, right, if you have and this isn't just with the way XCOM was before, this can be with anything. If you have a static set of possible options, right, one of those options is better than all the other ones are. It just is. Like, that's what's going to happen eventually in any system. But if which slice of that pool I get is different every time, then it doesn't matter if these are the 1, 2, 3 best abilities in that pool. If they're not part of this pool, well, guess what? Now 1, 2, 3 is actually functionally these other things that in another pool would be maybe the last 3 abilities that would matter. So that's really interesting.
It's like playing poker. You play with the hand you're dealt.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes you get a bad hand.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
But
XCOM 2 gives good life lessons.
Yeah.
You gotta roll with it.
Another one is randomized hacking rewards. We've got a bunch of hackable items around. You've got 2 different choices on. I assume it's most of them have 2 different choices, most if not all. Where you've got decent percent chance of hitting one reward and a lower percent chance of hitting a better reward.
Yep.
Some of those include like boosting your guy's hacking skill by 20 points, which is a pretty huge thing. You get
immunity to next to attacks is one thing I saw.
Yep. And you get it can be a dozen different things. Some of those have a risk associated with them, where if you fail, it calls down enemy reinforcements or boosts their defense and their aim or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of, and it's all dice roll stuff. It's all gambling.
Yep.
But when it pays off, like the rewards you get aren't consistent. You can't depend on getting one of those. But when you get them, they're cool.
Yeah, I mean, we made an effort to get a good pool, like a big one, so it feels different. And there's tactical ones that help you right now, and there's strategy related ones. And you mentioned the bad thing that can happen, which we love in XCOM. So yeah, it just really creates this. But I mean, there's ways to counteract it, because you kind of beef up your specialists in the hacking tree and get a better hacking gremlin, and he's got not that bad of a chance. So the risk is less.
Yeah.
But if you just go with some rookie with his X-pad,
it's pretty tough to hack early. But yeah, and the strategy rewards it's really cool, because you have this decision that you can improve tactical now, or if the stars align, you can get this strategy reward that you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed back at base. It actually happened to me once where I was low on intel and I had an alien facility. My avatar progress bar was filling up. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make contact quick enough, so I got a facility lead from Tactical, which was totally unexpected. It was a low percent to get through the hack, and I got it, and it was like a lifesaver for me going back to base, because then I could jump those 2 regions, take care of that facility. So it's stuff like that. Again, unpredictable. When it happens, it feels really satisfying if you can take advantage of it.
And the last thing I have on my list here, which probably isn't even all of them, you probably know some of them I don't, but the randomized dark projects, which are the every month the aliens will do three different dastardly schemes, and you can only stop one of them.
Yeah, the aliens aren't just kind of sitting there doing nothing. They'll try to make life harder for XCOM with directly making them lose by hunting you, or making their units stronger, or making stuff more expensive. So yeah, we made an effort to, because you have the opportunity to counter some of them. Sometimes they'll roll around again, and you're like, oh, I still can counter this, great. But you can't counter all of them, so bad stuff's gonna happen, and you kind of get to choose some of that, but not all of it, and they're random, so it really kind of shakes up. Yeah, because if all Advent have armor now, it kind of changes your plan for what you might want to build in the base. Maybe I should go for more grenades or armor-piercing stuff.
Faceless start showing up in the cities. That is not
Faces
fun.
appear everywhere. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. You've got one where it doubles the intel cost to expand, and things like that can completely change your plans. Like I didn't expect that to come up, and I had planned to go here, and here, and now I can't do that. I've got to completely rethink everything and try and overcome that. Yeah,
and it's like, and you had the chance to counter it too, so that's the thing. Like you made the choice to either go get the other reward, or you thought the other thing was worse, but it's your fault. You didn't.
Or maybe
let that happen.
Or maybe you fail that mission.
Yeah, you could fail it. And all of them happen. So that's not great. Failure is a thing that happens in XCOM, and dealing with it is part of the fun.
And then of course there are mods. Yeah. Well, once mods come along, you can change up your game like in many different ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can personally tell you that a lot of effort went into making the game accessible for modders, and I think we're going to be really surprised and happy with how quickly stuff is starting to come online with not a tremendous amount of effort. Obviously you probably need a little bit of coding knowledge to do some of the more complex stuff, but really I think it's a pretty low barrier for entry to kind of mod stuff. So the whole team is like really excited to see what the community does.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to dabbling myself.
Yeah,
I don't know how to code or anything, but I can mess with textures. I can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I bet I could probably figure out how to make like an IGN logo tattoo.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to dabbling.
Nice.
I guess like way back when with Star Trek Bridge Commander, I used to dabble in the like the Python scripts. Like I don't
yourself for me.
I don't know. Yeah, this is I don't know what year was that, like 2007 or 8 or something.
Oh, that's not that long ago.
Yeah, but no, it must be longer ago than that. But anyway, It's probably like 2000.
Maybe you're dating.
No, it's probably like
Maybe you're
1987.
dating yourself.
Yeah, I'm dating myself.
Like 2004, 2005. Anyway, no, it must have been like 03 or 04. Anyway, but I used to dabble in the Python files.
Sure.
I would just open them up and tinker in there. I don't know how to write Python, but I could see what had been done in there and changed values around, and that was plenty. Like I was able to do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, editing, config files, anybody can kind of do that. And, if you want the higher squad size or something, that's a config value.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, there's obviously ramifications like spawn points and stuff. Can they handle, that? But that's not that hard to change either. So
Yeah. Statistic tweaks, number tweaks, that should be fairly straightforward.
I mean, that's what we do when we're balancing the game for a large part. I mean, there's obviously some code stuff that we do as well, but a lot of the balancing is like this guy felt too strong, or this resource we have too much of it, we have too little of it, so we tweak these numbers around, and that's going to be very easy for monitors to change. So it's exciting.
And when you make it that easy, I mean, it still requires some knowledge, but easy enough that any kid can do it. Like that for me add like limitless value to a game, because like if I don't like something, I change it. Like if something like I don't like how strong this enemy is, or I don't like how weak he is, I change it.
That's right.
And like you can do
So
that.
we don't want to
yourself.
hear any more complaints from anyone.
We're just going to have an automatic reply. It's like, mod it, mod it. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Long War guys added a huge amount of value to a game that was not that moddable, and kind of can have this long tail for the community and community involvement in the game, which we loved. So we're happy to make that process easier than, having to hex edit, reverse engineer the code, and all this crazy nonsense that I can't do.
So are there any other bits of randomization that you've introduced that I haven't even figured out yet?
Probably.
I'm sure there are, but man, you broke that down really, really well.
10's such a round number. I don't want to.
I know.
Well, I made it 11 with
perfect.
mods, so
Oh yeah.
I broke it.
That's perfect.
Fix it for us.
Obviously, I mean, guerrilla tactics schools is sort of optional opt-in stuff, and there's some differences there from Enemy Unknown with sort of the class stuff that you can do. And
But all of those are
creating.
consistent from one. Like those
They
are consistent.
They are. It's just a choice of what you want to do at what time, how you want to build out your classes when you put rookies into training, which you couldn't do in Enemy Unknown. So and that's sort of just where you want to spend your time.
I mean, there's small stuff like the base layout is still semi-random, where stuff will appear and kind of how much resources they give you. That's random.
Right. The rewards for clearing out the alien junk and
where,
locations
like,
of the power.
where the
coils
power coils
and,
show up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, super sexy stuff like that.
Well,
Random.
yeah,
It's important.
Yeah,
You got rid of the adjacency stuff,
Right.
most of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's still a reason to not build the same exact base every time.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's less spots, but we kind of increase the complexity of each facility, and so you can upgrade them and make them do other things, or have
Right.
more staff slots that you can slot in. So you still have a lot of options on the base, which we're pretty happy with.
You talked about the dark events, which are certainly random. They're aliens. One of the dark events, Hunt XCOM, can also play outside of sort of that dark event compartment where they can hunt you and potentially shoot you down. That may happen in a playthrough. It might not. And it's a really cool mission when it happens, but you're on the brink of loss if they do that. So that sort of depends if you can evade them or not. And that's something that may or may not happen to you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I've got a couple of extra discussion topics we can cover. If I guess we got a little more
sure,
time here
yeah.
Ooh.
before you guys get pulled from our hands.
Sure.
So, soldiers in XCOM 2 so far feel much more powerful than
Sure.
in Within or Unknown. And even small adjustments like no longer having your turn end when you reload.
Yep.
And you've got the Enemy Within thing of having you can unlock 2 equipment slots for everyone. You've got like a bunch of the abilities feel dramatically more powerful.
Sure.
How has that changed your design in general? Like, have you buffed up the enemies considerably? Have you introduced any late game limitations to soldiers?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from the enemies being like the aliens in XCOM 2 are a good deal stronger than they were. Like the Advent do get very strong at the end of the game, but at the beginning of the game they're kind of just these kind
Fodder.
of regular dudes. Yeah, they're just fodder that you kill. But the aliens have a lot of crazy strong abilities and a lot of health to deal with.
I should add that like a lot of the abilities that you mess with, like things like lightning hands for the sniper, give you extra actions.
Right.
Whereas you almost never saw that in Enemy Unknown or Within, except like with the sniper double tap.
Yeah.
Like you very rarely got that. Now, the sniper, the sharpshooter has one, the ranger has one with just a bunch of these new abilities that just let each soldier do more per turn.
Right, and I think it's kind of a combination of a lot of things how we balanced it, but I think in general it's the nature of the tactical game is different. It is a much more frenetic, you have to take a lot of risks, and without kind of soldiers able to deal with that, it'll feel really bad because you'll feel like you can't handle it. Because you still, even with these, I agree the soldiers they feel stronger, but the missions, you have a time limit, and you'll be facing these crazy aliens, and you have to deal with all of this somehow, and so that all kind of combines together to let them be strong, and you get to do this cool stuff, but it's still not easy. It's still a very difficult game, in my opinion.
And I think that's one of the fun things about giving players more power, right, is that once you put more tools into their hands and given them more to work with, suddenly from a design standpoint, you can go, well, now that they have all these extra tools, I can design a whole lot more deviant.
Yeah.
I can throw a whole lot more at them now.
Let's just pull them out of cover.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys had some big goals to make the aliens feel way more powerful with the number of abilities they can do, the things they can do. When you look at the aliens relative to XCOM 2, the Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within aliens, just the number of abilities are way, way more for what each one can do. It feels like they have more character because of the deviant things they can do. So you have to give the player a little bit more tools, and design did a great job of looking at each ability per class and also saying like, we want to give the player more value per ability. Like they feel more impactful as you go down that tree, which I think is a really cool feeling when you're upgrading these guys. There's not really many throwaway abilities that sort of feel like they don't do much. It's always this I know how this is going to start playing into the moment-to-moment puzzle.
You really culled out a lot of the abilities. Like there are very few carryover abilities from XCOM Enemy Within to XCOM 2.
Yeah, they did a great job of that. I mean, there was a lot of iteration on abilities, and there's a big pass, mid-production to make sure that these things were meaty and that they felt unique.
Yeah, I think another thing that kind of balances it, we kind of jacked up the wound times. So guys will be out for especially on Legend, which is just I'm gone for 45 days.
But you also allow them to assign a scientist to, the Advanced Warfare Center?
Yeah, so you can staff an engineer in the Advanced Warfare Center to increase heal times.
Or
but you might need
decrease heal times.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know why you would do that. Well, it's in there.
That engineer is bad at his job.
Why is he doing that? But you might need him to do something else on the base, so it's part of the whole ecosystem of your base if you want to do that.
That raises a side question. Are there ever scientists or engineers that are special and have have greater bonuses?
No, they're all kind of the same. I think Tygan is actually kind of a super scientist in
That's
data.
right.
But yeah, they're all kind of the same.
It's a piece on that board.
Yeah.
They can have their own name and backstory and face. So you can. I've rescued a few of my friends off the battlefield, and they've gone and started helping Tygan on research projects.
Yeah. So I guess at this point, you guys are just polishing up and fixing bugs. Are there any that you are glad or not? Of course, you're glad you fixed a bug.
I hated fixing that bug.
Was there like an enemy bug of yours that you finally vanquished?
I don't know. There's
you had no bugs. You just implemented.
I write perfect code, so I don't know what you're talking about. But no, there've been some funny bugs. There's some funny ragdoll bugs. Obviously, there's always. I think the chrysalid can make a cocoon, and there was a bug that. Damien in our office, they had a bug where the physics go crazy and would start jumping up and down, and it looked hilarious.
I do love the ragdoll physics you've got in there now.
Oh, yeah, it looks so good.
Sometimes they do glitch out. Like I guess it's probably Havoc physics, right? Or is it your own thing?
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's every so often somebody will do the thing where they get stuck and kind of wobble a bunch, but the trade-off for that is some really hilarious death animations.
Guys getting draped over fences.
Those are very satisfying.
Falling off rooftops.
Yeah.
It's great. And for me, part of what keeps me playing a game like this is the death animations. They're kind of their own reward. They're different every time. It's I didn't expect that. Sometimes they just fall down, sure, but other times
And then when
they
you
put
get
on a
that
show.
that slow-mo death, it's just that
Yep.
extra layer
Yeah.
of satisfaction that happens a small percentage of the time. So it's pretty cool how the content team as well put that together with engineering to say this is how we want the presentation to be and make it better than Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within, to get that sort of directorial feel when you're down on the battlefield and have those payoff moments.
And lastly, I just want to talk about the tech tree, which feels much more broad. And it's not randomized, but I guess there's a little bit of randomness in there because you can get things you can research that give you bonuses to intel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But mostly the technological progression is static. Every time you go through, but there are enough options that it feels like there's I'm never going to research everything, or at least not anytime real soon.
Right.
And so I can, and it feels like there are probably more than one viable path there.
Yeah, a lot of effort went into making, we've already talked about in this podcast that we don't want you to have one, optimal path. And the research tree, even though it is static, we wanted to make, each one impactful and give you good stuff. And there's definitely been meetings and design meetings where we're like, oh, this research only gives you this. Like, we need to make that better.
Do you guys ever talk with like the Civilization guys about that? Because they've got a big research tree.
Their research tree is pretty great.
and
It's going from the beginning of time.
Their game is the research tree. We also have tactical to worry about as well.
The Civ guys are great and good, playtesting resources as well. But yeah, we put a lot of effort into, making it different and making different viable options. Like we talked about before, I could build mag weapons. I could go for Psi, and maybe I want my guys armored. Maybe I want to go for. So in Legend particularly, we did a big focus on. It's really hard to get these big tier upgrades, like mag weapons and stuff take forever and are really expensive. So there's this kind of focus on, let me kind of, instead of going like 2.0, let me go like 1.5 and get all these utility items that they're still expensive, but they're not as expensive. So you can kind of boost your guys up without having this huge, all at once upgrade. And that's still that's a viable option at all levels.
Do you have a favorite, either of you, like a favorite bit of tech that you it's like a pet tech that you always rush, exactly, that you always rush to, that you always like to grab when you can?
It's going to be so boring, but I do go for the GTS first with the squad size upgrade. I do that. I find myself doing that often. I haven't done that every playthrough, but it's such a safety net for me. I feel good about it.
I think I've had probably the most fun of my playthroughs when I tried to rush psionics.
Yeah.
Because you end up being weaker tactically for a bit because you're not doing weapons and stuff. But then you kind of just get this dude who's like he's not been in your squad. Like who's
it's
this
like
new
the
guy?
secret weapon you had up your sleeve.
But then he does these crazy abilities. Like
Yeah.
he can give you more actions. He can it's powerful. He can permanently mind control somebody.
Yep. And the tech tree is not. It is static, but it's funny. It almost feels dynamic. It almost feels a little procedural because there's so many things that you guys have just talked about that you may not get to at all in your playthrough. You may not even realize that was a branch off of something until a subsequent playthrough when you start going down that. So it almost feels like there's this malleable element to the tech tree that wasn't there as much in Enemy Unknown, which is really cool. My first 2 playthroughs, actually, I did not touch Psi at all. And the AWC, sometimes I don't even get to it all. So
It's pretty important on
I know
difficulties.
Yeah, well, I lost that one.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you may not even go down there.
So out of curiosity, why did you not randomize the tech tree at all?
I think it's mostly because it's such a pillar of and foundation of kind of what the XCOM experience is. Like you want them to have something they can kind of grok and hold on to, and research is kind of that constant in XCOM. Because you always want to be doing research. You always want to speed up your research. So having that solid base, I think, is where that decision comes from.
And I guess most of the story events are directly tied to research.
Yeah, there's a lot of the story stuff is research and missions and all these things that come from that. So
that's one of the interesting decisions as well that we're not talking about as much in specifics now, but it's weighing that sort of greed tech part of the tree versus you also have to win the game part of the tree, which it gives you a lot of cool narrative moments.
Right.
Yes,
well.
right. That's right. And that's part of the big balance with the tree. And they're obviously intermingled, but you have sort of these choke points where you have to decide, do I want to stop the aliens here, or do I want to keep going for this really cool gear?
And it's also important because, in a game where now there's so many kind of randomized dynamic elements, you ask yourself, well, where's the player's sense of progression from beginning to end going to come from? There has to be some kind of a map for that, right? And the tech tree is as good of a map as any.
Yeah, so in general, that's a good answer. The tech tree, it does serve that purpose, as well as your soldiers leveling up. Those are your two, big progression milestones that you can just look at and be like, oh, I have a lieutenant and I have mag weapons or something like that.
The avatar progress bar is also sort of the inverse of that.
That's just how badly
am I doing. That's right. And you need to weigh that against how far am I in the tech tree? Well, this is getting pretty darn close to loss here, and how are the regions going, and how many facilities are on the map, and that's always sort of in the back of your mind as well.
And how long is a playthrough generally?
It's comparable to EU length. Obviously, there's some variation there, but
so between 20 and 30 hours, kind of.
Yeah, comparable to EU. I've seen some crazy variation though internally.
Yeah, and Legend is about 1.5 to 2 times longer because all the techs but you still do missions on kind of the same schedule, so you end up doing a lot more missions.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right, guys. Well, that was a lot of fun.
Happy to talk XCOM too.
Yeah. I love picking your brain on that kind of thing.
Sure.
I could do that for a few hours, but I don't think you have that much time to spend with us. So
let's leave. You guys can continue.
Mark,
you all right?
Give you some privacy.
But yeah, thank you guys very much for coming by, and very much looking forward to getting my hands on a version of XCOM 2 that does not rudely cut me off.
Oh, sorry about that.
In the early game. You guys are teases.
Yeah.
It's okay. He still found a way to put 86 hours on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what my Steam clock says, that I have an infant, so there's a lot of alt tabbing.
No, Dan,
it's still 86
hours. That's good. I like that. I like that. That's good.
We'll take it.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a significant number of hours where I was actually there playing it. But yeah, thank you guys very much, and I'm looking forward to February 5th.
So are we. Whenever you play it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.